everyone. I'm Dr. Renee Mehrra. Thank you so much for joining Zoom In with Renee. Today we have a very special episode. Actually, we're going to be doing a 3-part series on this. It is about live-in relationships. Do they actually work in the long run? Are they serious? Are they committed relationships? Are they fulfilling in the long run? So joining me today, I have an international panel. It's from India, UK, and US, and they're all going to share their views and tell us what they think about this critical topic. So joining me, I have from US, Dr. Seet Vivek. He's the Chairman Emeritus, Department of Addiction Services and Psychiatry, Jamaica Hospital in New York. He's also the past president of New York State Psychiatric Association. Thank you so much for joining, Dr. Vivek.
Thank you.
From India, we have author. She's a filmmaker. She has written a book. It's a 3-volume book, and it's about knowledge of love and healing. Dr. Raj Lakshmi Darbari. Thank you, Dr. Raj Lakshmi. And from India again, we have Mrs. Nandita Sahu. She's an educator for over 3 decades now. She's a principal in state of Haryana in a school there, and she has been having this innate love for children, and that drives her to keep in touch and keep that connection, as has been a principal of many, many schools before, in day schools and residential schools. So thank you so much, Mrs. Sahu, for joining today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. From US, Shravan Sen. He's actually a sitarist. I know him as a very well-known sitarist as a young adult. He is going for his doctorate at Cambridge in London. Right now he's in New York. And so good luck, Shravan, with your doctorate and with your sitar music, which is wonderful. As well as from US, I have Sneha Doltani. She is going to med school very soon. And from UK, it's Vijay Doshi. He has done a lot of British drama series on Sherlock. He works at the West End Theatre, and he has a lot to share with us. So thank you all for joining. It is a very critical topic, especially when we're looking at young adults from India. In UK, US, in the West, it's become like the commonplace. People don't really reflect too much on it. But in India, especially in the urban areas, it's catching on, and we want to hear from them as to what they think about it. So let me first go to Raj Lakshmi Darbari, living in India and being the author of this Knowledge of Love and Healing. What's your take on this?
It's, as you can see, the book, right? Knowledge of Love and Healing. The book actually talks about your mind, body, heart, and soul, which you all get involved in, whether you're in a live-in relationship or you're having casual sex. Now, the issue is, what is the purpose of the live-in relationship? Is it going to give you that, are you looking for your life partner? Are you looking for just casual sex, or you just want to be with somebody? These are very important issues which have to be addressed. But I don't think, like you say, that society reflects upon it. And if society is not going to reflect upon it, then what happens with the mind, body, heart, and soul? If you're in it just for the sake of lust, then your mind and body is in it. If you're in it with true love, then your mind, heart, body, and soul is in it. Then it has a really great fulfillment. Because to live this whole life without true love is not a living life. It's sort of plodding along in life and trying to enjoy your life with small little pleasures. Now, we have all talked about the Kama Sutra. We've all talked about the sexual urges. Now, another deep topic which my book deals with is the sexual urges of the youngsters, which propel them either into casual sex or to just not being able to control their own sexual urges. So there is a phenomenon which is missing in our education system, and that is to treat or teach the children how to control your sexual urges and how to direct them towards your soulmate.
Thank you very much, Dr. Raj Lakshmi. Dr. Vivek, Tell us from the psychiatric perspective, and you have had a big innings in this area.
Thank you, Renee, and greetings to all my fellow panelists. I mean, the issue obviously is very complex and there are multiple perspectives, but from a psychiatric lens, it's relatively limited. Simply put, we as psychiatrists get called in when somebody is in distress. When things are going well, nobody's calling a psychiatrist. One doesn't need a psychiatric opinion. And, it could be one person or both members in the couple who are distressed. It could be someone else, such as a parent who is distressed. And so the challenge for the psychiatrist then becomes to diagnose what is that source of distress, and is it something that would be amenable to therapy, counseling. So sometimes the issue is the individual. Are their needs being met? Do they have reasonable expectations? Is one or both parties, do they feel fulfilled? Do they feel they're being taken advantage of? Does one feel arm twisted into a live-in relationship by the other? So these are some issues internally between the couple. And then you've got external issues. Are there obstacles from parents, from family? Do you have hostile neighbors? I know sometimes you got local vigilantes in parts of India who object to the idea of unmarried people living together, and they can be a source of irritation. So the point then becomes, can we address these issues? What becomes the focus of counseling? So some thoughts are, what needs healing? What expectation and whose expectations need to be modified? And most importantly, when is leaving the relationship the healthiest and safest option? So those are just some initial thoughts I have about the general issue.
I think you brought out quite a few salient points here, the expectations, the hostility that could be external, and what happens when there's a split. What does the family think about it? What do my friends think about it? What do I think about it? Most importantly, how do I move on now with my life if I've gone through a kind of a relationship that broke and got me into trauma? So ask our young adults, and I'm going to go back to Mrs. Sahu after that. Shraman, what is your take on this?
Yeah, thank you. I think I can only speak from a personal standpoint. I haven't really read into the literature on this, but I can say that from personal experiences, I was in NYU for my undergrad, and NYU is kind of at the heart of New York City. And this is actually a very common thing in New York City young adults. Even in the college demographics, they kind of partake in living relationships. I believe external stimuli or your general environment probably plays a huge role, because I've known people who were fairly conservative when they were in high school. And as you know, when you're in high school, you're living with your parents. So your immediate environment becomes your household. You're only living, or you're only spending so much of time in the school, maybe 6 hours a day, but the rest of the time you're at home. So the household, I think, plays a huge role in your ways. But then once you go off to college, things change, because you're no longer living, with your parents. For the most part, I mean, it depends. I was commuting, but a lot of my friends did not commute. They were dorming. And, they were dorming in NYU, which is in the heart of New York City, which has this particular environment. So I think environment plays a huge role in determining if you're going to partake in things like living relationships or anything surrounding that. So that's just one observation I had, but I'm sure there are many other factors involved.
I just want to say that I strongly believe that the mind, body, soul, the entire universe is made out of this energy of love. And once you embrace that, It helps you handle everything truthfully. Now, what is a word that is so connected with love is freedom. Now, here in the UK, we have many people living in relationships. Now, if there is communication with listening, understanding, and respect between both parties, then why not? If it will allow you to blossom and flourish without going through the stages of marriage, then why not? So this is my belief, that if you are being guided along with your partner to live together, then it's all happy days, really.
You've had a live-in relationship?
I personally have, for approximately 5 to 6 years with my ex-girlfriend. So we did not see that we needed to get married. And due to other circumstances, we parted ways, we drifted ways. But I can see why people want to live together before getting married. It does make a lot of sense.
Okay. Sneha, are you with us?
Speak. And I'd like to say that over from 1996 to 2017, we've seen kind of an upward trend, as everyone's been saying, of live-in relationships from the US, UK, India, so on. And there's been a correlation between an increased amount of live-in situations and an increase of couples who usually end up not staying together. Now, there are different beliefs regarding this, and there is one perspective that usually if there are couples who end up living together, there will be since all of their needs are met, in the sense of like living in together is the same as a married couple living together, they will see that, oh, I don't need to get married because all the things that I need right now, this is what I get. Like I'm getting a house, I'm getting like able to live with my partner and all that. So then marriage, the incentive is less in that sense. But again, when we take into account all these different perspectives, I think an important thing to note is that there is no right and wrong when it comes to love. And people usually try to focus too much on the details of like, this is, oh, if I do this, this is guaranteed success in a relationship. If I don't do this, this is a guaranteed success. And at the end of the day, I feel like instead of like people who end up focusing too much on the details, they end up forgetting the whole beautiful idea about love and the joyous amount about it. But that is my take.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Sahu, you interact with young adults on a regular basis, so you understand a lot of issues of theirs. What do you see what's going on in India at this point of time, especially in urban areas where we see young adults wanting to live in together and go for a live-in relationship as opposed to marriage?
Well, having been in the education sector for over 3 decades, I've seen a decided mind shift in the minds of these young adults as they move out from school to colleges and then to professional lives. Yes, I would say the mind shift is more apparent in urban areas, in metropolitan cities. And coming from Delhi myself, I'm now working in a smaller city where we still have a conservatism and orthodoxy in society. The joint family structure is still intact. However, in metropolitan cities, the joint family system has broken down. And there is nuclear family. The nuclear family has taken shape. And the youngsters are shifting more towards being individual-centric. And when they become individual-centric, I feel that is where the pressure of society or the pressure of society to commit to a relationship is not there. That is when these youngsters explore their choices and their choices for partners or lovers or friends, and these relationships go through a flux as an individual evolves over time. And without the burden, which this is what the youngsters' perception is, without the burden of getting tied down in matrimony and the social and familial responsibilities, these youngsters prefer to have the individual choice playing a paramount role there in deciding whether their relationships should be, long-term, short-term, fluid. I think there is a lot of fluidity in decision-making and consistency in maintaining relationships.
I think you hit on so many important points about fluidity in this relationship. People evolve. So what somebody thought a year ago or 2 years ago may not be the same as moving forward. There could be a paradigm shift in the way the person thinks. And it could be one person evolved more than the other. And that could create a conflict and break up that relationship. There's many times many young adults look at what happened with their families, with their friends, how their marriages broke up, and how they went through legal battles, whether it's alimony or whatever it was, and they don't want to go through that. So they go with the safest option for them in their head, that let's say maybe the live-in relationship is probably the answer for that couple. But down the road, things can change, mindsets change. It's going to be long-term, short-term, whether it's going to be fulfilling in the end. Do I want children? Maybe at 21, 22, it seems okay, but maybe a decade later, you start thinking of some other points to consider. Do I need a family? Do I need to move on? Or should I stay in this? Or should I go into a commitment that is more lasting?
That even though the focus of this meeting is about young adults, I want to point out that a lot of older adults are also in live-in relationships. Many divorced people, many widowed people have chosen to not get married in order to live together. So I would suggest that that is also an issue. And while the dynamics may be different and the problems they face may be quite different from what younger adults do, and the second point I wanted to make is that much of this is very contextual. It is very dependent on where one lives, what is not just society, but not just the culture, but the subculture where one lives. So what is an act of defiance in one context is totally normative in another. And so I just wanted to say that for perspective.
If you look at it in the context of culture, something could be commonplace in one culture, in one society, in another place. It's totally could be a taboo, be looked down upon, or something shocking for some people. And for others, it would be like, this is my way of life. And you also brought an older population, but they don't want to go through this whole thing again, and they just say, well, I just live with my partner. It's a complex situation, and as Mrs. Sahu said, it's a fluid process. It's too complex to be confined or in a box and say, this is the way it is going to be, this is how it's going to turn out to be. A lot of relationships, when they go into a relationship, they go for a commitment. Most of them, unless we say, okay, I want to just go for adventure and let's see where it goes, and we'll probably live together for a year or so. But most times couples want to embrace longevity, and sometimes it doesn't happen. That's a separate story. Vijay, you have a little bit more on this issue that you can talk about, since you went through a relationship. It was a live-in relationship for some years.
A bigger part that plays in what we're talking about is, for a young adult, personal experience, if you have seen, which I have seen many marriages of the older generation, you know, they're living together for the sake of it. They're living together because it's a taboo subject to get a divorce, to get a separation. So I guess beforehand, when I was inside, you could say, a lower energy vibration of fear, anxiety, nervousness, I did not want to get married because I felt that I was not in that correct energy, well, the high energy, the love energy, to essentially go forth with my girlfriend and remain together, because I was just here and there and here. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that it plays a huge fact that in terms of when a child is growing up, you know, he's a teenager, a young adult, what he sees before him. If he always sees arguments between his parents, but also different people in marriages, then what are the chances he will want to get married? It's very low chances.
What you're basically talking about is that your living relationship is an escapism from marriage. You can't use nothing as an alternative, because marriage is a commitment. It's the joining of two hearts and two souls. But how do you get there? Not by living relationships with just anybody and experimenting. This is when you have to go right inside yourself, connect with your own mind, body, heart, and soul.
So, did you look at as an escapism, or did you think that you really wanted to go with this relationship? Because sometimes marriages do, you go with that commitment and somewhere something goes off and it turns out.
When we're bringing up this word marriage, are we talking about it religiously or what? I don't understand.
No. It's a childhood dream of everybody to marry their Prince Charming or marry their Cinderella. Let's not forget about that. Now, as you're growing up, if you see people around you getting divorced, or they're living in relationships, or they're having casual sex, then your mind gets swayed by that.
But is it a childhood dream of everyone?
It is of everybody's childhood dream. Everybody wants to have a permanent relationship, because that is what gives you stable life, and it gives you an emotional commitment, which gives you a kind of mental security, which gives you a comfort on the basis of which you can live your whole life on. They say that one moment of love means a whole lifetime.
But the answer comes from within.
You have to find that love.
The answer comes from within. So are you saying that you need someone to marry to blossom in your life?
You need to find your own soulmate. If you look for something, if you go to buy a washing machine, you know which brand you want, but you know what you want to buy. Similarly, in your emotional relationship.
Okay, Raj, I want to mention here that you're looking for a soulmate. Absolutely accepted. But what about the other side? I may be looking for a soulmate, but the other party may not be looking for a soulmate, or may not be looking for a permanent relationship. And that's where this
That's why the society is not meeting up on the right level with their own people whom they're really meant to be with. And this commitment is not coming from both the male section or the female section. They're all a little bit confused after seeing what's happened to society. Now we look at the West, we look at the East, and then we go into emotional and cultural conflicts. So with a dichotomy in our mind, we ourselves don't know what we want. We forget about it.
It's a very deep topic. To be honest, I personally haven't felt the need that I need to be connected with someone in order to have a certain degree of stability. But again, that's just me. I can't speak on behalf of the masses. But I personally feel that, it could be that it's not necessary to find stability in life in order to be like absolutely connected to someone via marriage, or even if it's a relationship without the marriage label. I never thought that, I need to and again, I'm to be very frank, I've never, dated. So, my background could be, playing a role here in my answer, but I never really thought that, I need to be with someone and, that person has to be committed and I have to be committed to that person in order for a certain degree of stability to, be present in my life. For example, music is something, and this probably is going a bit too philosophical, but music is something that actually gives me stability. If I know that I will always have my instrument and I'll always have the opportunity to play my instrument and listen to music, that personally gives me more stability. And that commitment to me is much more important than a commitment with another human being or partner.
A young gentleman, he has, the analogy that he's brought with his music and stability. And he's used the statement that the music will always be with me. Now, what happens in a live-in relationship, we are in a house that always has a window open. And when we see that window open all the time as an exit route, it becomes the first sign of confrontation or conflict or social maladjustment. The window seems to be an easier way to escape. And each time you escape or an exit from a relationship that may not have worked out, it leaves both sides with embittered feelings, hurt, pain, dejection, rejection, making them a little more unable to, probably kind of assimilate themselves back into the normal mode and again go. So what happens is you're leaving people you're leaving people embittered to further go into more commitment. So you flit from relationship to relationship. Whereas I'm speaking from the Indian context. We have probably the lowest divorce rates, one of the lowest divorce rates in the world, especially in interior India with the smaller cities and towns. Why is it that, yes, two individuals to come together may have been brought together with similar likes and dislikes with a previous relationship that has culminated into marriage, or perhaps we have a unique concept in India, which is the arranged marriage, where partners grow to love and care for each other. But the exit window in a marriage is not so open, not so vivid, and not there right in your face all the time, and make it so easily accessible to probably jump out at the first sign of conflict, where there is probably encourages more tolerance, more patience, more understanding in relationships, rather than, again, coming back to the point that I stressed earlier, it being individual centric, that if I cannot adjust into a relationship, I exit.
Right. So what you brought out is that live-in relationship, the window is always open. I can make that exit anytime if things don't come out right. If things are going south, I'm going to just get out. So the question of long-term acceptance and tolerance, compromise and sacrifice, which we see many times in deep relationships and marriages, may not be existing in a live-in relationship unless that the couple is going with that depth and breadth of understanding that I want to make this happen, I want to continue with this. But then a part of the person is going to think, I can always get out anytime I want if things really go bad, and come out unscathed. But I don't think anybody comes out unscathed, because there's a lot of hurt. At least one of the partners is probably going to think of hurt, of dejection and rejection, unless both had that commitment that was not so deep. Relationship if it has to grow and flower and expand, it needs to have that deep understanding between the two people. Compromises and sacrifices are so very important.
I appreciate what Dr. Darbari and what Mrs. Sahu have mentioned, but I'd like to disagree with one aspect. And that strong disagreement is that you cannot generalize something that as if it applies to the entire society or an entire culture. So, for example, not everybody has had childhood dreams of Prince Charming or a Cinderella.
That's my point.
It often has to do with the very first marriage or first relationship one was exposed to, which usually is the marriage of one's parents. if you grew up in a loving home, or where a home where there was a lot of, say, fun and gaiety, that's quite different than if you grew up in a home where there was spousal abuse or violence, or, So I think what our dreams consist of are dependent upon our early childhood experiences. So I think there are multiple factors involved. I'm not arguing with the general principle of what Dr. Darbari or what Mrs. Sahu have mentioned. All I'm trying to say is that there are lots of individual differences, and it's very hard to generalize one set of rules that would apply universally. So, I mean, that was the main thing that I wanted to convey. And one other aspect, which is a little bit more subtle, and that is that even the notion that every broken relationship is traumatic, even that I think is not generalizable. While it is true that most breakups hurt, but it is also true that we often grow from relationships that didn't work out, sometimes more than the times something did.
When I moved from this low energy of negativity in my life as I was going through my journey into this energy of love, helping me to handle everything truthfully, I've had multiple relationships, and I've realized that the different girls I've been with, some of them I don't miss at all, but some of them I miss, right? And I believe that we all have multiple soulmates. There's this whole idea of, oh, we have one soulmate. We are there with that person in our lifetime. It's a joke. I'm sorry. And I'm saying that through experience, that these different girls that came into my life helped me in a specific moment that I was going through in terms of healing myself and what I was doing career-wise and so on and so forth.
Just your final thoughts in one sentence. Do live-in relationships work in the end? And your personal thoughts on this?
I believe live-in relationships do work if both parties are living inside the energy of love, helping them to handle their situations truthfully, listening, understanding, respecting, and empathizing with each other.
Yeah, I think it definitely could work with mutual respect and transparency. Why not?
I would say is a relationship, whether it is in marriage or whether it's a live-in relationship, and involves two minds, two hearts, two souls. And there has to be mutual consideration. And I agree with the young man, trust and respect. If these basic values can be compounded into a relationship, whether it is long-term, short-term, I think there is happiness and there's satisfaction for both involved.
At the end of it, if you are expecting trust and faithfulness, am I right, in your relationships, in the live-in relationships, and mutual respect. So that means you are concluding that if you don't find that in your live-in relationship, you're going to opt out. So what are we exactly looking for? Are we looking for true love, or are we looking for respect only? We have to understand this before we move into a live-in relationship. If you don't have feelings, they don't work.
Mehrra, the one sentence response I would simply say is it all depends. It all depends on a whole bunch of factors having to do with the two individuals, having to do with the society they live in, the kind of support they get, and so on. Many factors. But it could work, sure.
Thank you very much, all of you. And I think the basics should be there in a relationship: love, trust, respect, compromise, sacrifice, and a deep understanding of one another. I think that definitely is a way to live in any relationship. So we're going to continue this three-part series. In the next part 2, we're going to have some more young adults from India as well. Thank you all. Dr. Raj Lakshmi Darbari, Dr. C. Vivek, Mrs. Nandita Sahu, Vijay Doshi, Shraman Sen, and Sneha Doltani. I'm Dr. Renee Mehrra. Stay healthy, stay positive.